Lily and Jack Sullivan, two children vanish from their rural home. No noise, no trace, no witnesses. No footprints. No backpacks. Just gone. The mother leaves without a word. The stepfather stays behind, saying, "I'm not their father." No one in the family speaks. No community support. No lawyer. No cries for help. The house was silent. The forest was empty. The timeline, full of holes. Why did it take 4 hours to call 911? Why was the search called off so soon? Why didn't the police release the satellite data? How do two small kids disappear without a single piece of evidence left behind? And more importantly, where are Lily and Jack Sullivan now? Are they still out there? The problems in the search. Unlike the other cases of missing, the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan has spiraled far beyond a typical missing persons investigation, not only because of its strange inconsistencies, but also due to the glaring failures of those involved, both within the Sullivan family and the very teams entrusted with finding the children. So what are the problems? One of the most troubling aspects of the Jack and Lily Sullivan case is the delayed response by authorities and the absence of an AMBR alert, despite circumstances that, to many, clearly met the criteria. From the beginning, the timeline was fuzzy. Malaya claimed she noticed the kids were missing around 9:40 a.m. on May 2, but police weren't contacted until around 10 a.m. That 20-minute gap might not seem long, but when it comes to missing children, every minute counts. Even more frustrating is the fact that it's still unclear who first noticed the children were gone, who checked the doors, and who made the decision to finally contact law enforcement. Despite two very young children going missing under highly suspicious circumstances, no signs of them leaving voluntarily, no signs of forced entry, and no confirmed sightings afterward, no AMBR alert was issued. This stunned the public. The AMBR alert system is meant to engage the community quickly, get the children's photos and descriptions out fast, and turn every person in the area into a potential witness. But in this case, that didn't happen. As a result, many residents in the surrounding areas had no idea what was going on until long after the most critical 24-hour window had passed. The consequences of this slow response are heartbreaking. The first 24 hours in any missing child case are the most important. That's when most leads are fresh, and the chances of recovery are highest. But in this case, with no AMBR alert, no immediate community mobilization, and only scattered search efforts, those critical hours were lost. Key clues may have disappeared. Witnesses may have gone unspoken too. Surveillance footage from nearby roads may have been erased before anyone knew to ask for it. The lack of early alert may be caused by the complete absence of a reliable and verifiable timeline. Despite having multiple adults on the property, each with proximity to the children, the details of when the children were last seen, who noticed they were missing, and what actions were taken afterward remain vague, contradictory, and disturbingly unchallenged by investigators. Daniel Martel initially claimed he saw or heard the children at 10 a.m. on May 2. Later, in leaked messages, he is believed to admit that 10 a.m. wasn't accurate, effectively undermining the only concrete time reference tied to his account. Malaya, the children's mother, placed the last time she heard the children at 9:40 a.m., not saw them, just heard them. Compounding the confusion, Daniel's mother Belinda reportedly heard Daniel calling for the kids as early as 8:30 a.m. from her RV next door. If accurate, this creates a nearly 90-minute gap before the children were reported missing, a critical delay that has never been publicly reconciled. Even more baffling is that no one, not Daniel, not Malaya, not Belinda, has been able to clearly identify who first realized the children were gone. Who opened the sliding door? Who physically checked the backyard? Who suggested calling the police? These basic, foundational details remain either unanswered or absent from any official statement. Between 6:30 and 10 a.m., the household timeline collapses into a fog of ambiguous activity. Daniel says he woke up around 7:30 or 700 a.m., but there is no account of feeding the children, checking on them, or engaging in any normal parenting behavior. Jack, a child still in pull-ups, had no documented care or attention that morning. Even Malaya's timeline of events hinges on her being in and out of sleep, despite having a newborn and 2 other kids in the house. Shockingly, the RCMP later confirmed there is no visual confirmation, camera footage, witness, or otherwise proving the children were alive after May 1. This contradicts the family's version, which insists the kids were home on the morning of May 2. What's worse, investigators have made little effort to publicly address or reconcile these inconsistencies. There have been no released timelines, no verified witness statements, and no cross-examinations made available to the public. When it comes to witness credibility, the case is just as shaky. All key accounts come from the people living on the property. Daniel and Malaya contradict each other. One saw, the other heard. Belinda heard yelling, but her actions afterward are vague. Justin, Daniel's brother, has remained completely silent. No statements, no interviews, no known presence in the investigation. There's also the crucial question of the sliding back door. It was reportedly the exit route, but no one has confirmed who last touched it, who found it open, or, when it was discovered, ajar. In a household filled with children and adults, this critical point of entry-exit has been glossed over in the investigation. Then comes the most damning question: why did it take until 10 a.m. to call the police, if the kids weren't seen since the previous evening or the early morning? Why wasn't the alarm raised sooner? Many in the community have voiced that any attentive parent would have noticed their child missing long before breakfast. The police's failing to challenge these narrative gaps only worsens the case's trajectory. There's no pressure applied to weak or silent witnesses. No timeline diagrams for public accountability. With such a fragile web of testimony, all coming from people who may have a reason to conceal, the absence of firm, factual grounding in the timeline should have prompted far more aggressive investigation tactics. Instead, what the public sees is a fog of contradictions and a law enforcement response that appears passive, delayed, and strangely deferential. In missing children cases, time is everything. And yet here time, the very foundation for investigation, remains a mystery no one seems eager to solve. For the polygraph test, the biggest point of contention revolves around Daniel Martel's claim that he passed the polygraph. This assertion first appeared in leaked messages and social media posts, not in any official RCMP statement or press release. To date, no formal documentation confirms that Daniel even underwent a polygraph under law enforcement supervision, let alone passed it. In fact, the agency hasn't acknowledged conducting the test or reviewed its findings publicly. This raises immediate skepticism, not only because plaques lack admissibility in most North American courts, but because they are inherently unreliable. They measure physiological responses, like heart rate and sweat, not lies. Countless notorious criminals have passed polygraphs, including serial killers like Ted Bundy and Gary Ridgway, as well as CIA mole Aldrich Ames. It's widely known that people under the influence of drugs or with certain psychological profiles can suppress or manipulate their body's reactions to beat the test. Given online speculation about Daniel's possible substance use, the polygraph's value becomes even more questionable. Even more troubling is the fact that only Daniel appears to have taken such a test. There is no evidence that Malaya Brooks Murray, Belinda Martel, or Justin Martel were asked to undergo similar scrutiny, despite all residing on the same property. These individuals were potentially present or nearby at the time of the children's disappearance. Yet, there is no public record of them being polygraphed, interrogated in depth, or even officially questioned. This uneven application of investigative pressure has not gone unnoticed. Online communities and case observers are actively demanding that all individuals connected to the household submit to polygraph testing, not to serve as definitive proof of innocence or guilt, but to at least narrow the field of suspicion. Many argue that a full sweep of polygraphs would clear public doubt and might even allow for the activation of an AMBR alert, which remains inexplicably absent. Compounding this mistrust is the complete absence of procedural transparency. There is no clarity about which agency, if any, conducted Daniel's alleged test. If it was done through a private examiner rather than the RCMP, its investigative weight is negligible. Moreover, there's no indication of any follow-up questioning, psychological assessment, or effort to corroborate the test with electronic data from Daniel's devices, despite unverified claims that authorities are now checking phones and laptops. In a case where no children have been seen alive since May 1st, where there are conflicting time statements, and where every adult in proximity has a potential role, applying a polygraph to only one suspect is not only inadequate, it borders on negligent, especially when that individual self declares the results without external confirmation. Ultimately, the over-reliance or strategic invocation of a polygraph test to deflect suspicion from Daniel, while ignoring others in his household, deepens public mistrust. It suggests a fragmented investigation, one where critical scrutiny has not been applied equally and where basic standards of verification remain unmet. And in the search for two missing children, that's not just a flaw, it's a failure. From the early stage, the most concerning issues in the investigation of Lily and Jack Sullivan's disappearance is the lack of timely and thorough forensic examination. From the very beginning, there appeared to be no immediate effort to secure the scene or evacuate the individuals living within the home. Daniel, Malaya, Belinda, and Justin remained on the property, raising serious questions about whether crucial evidence may have been contaminated or lost in those first critical hours. Furthermore, there is no official confirmation that digital devices, such as phones, laptops, or security cameras, were properly seized or analyzed. While some online posts suggest that certain devices were reviewed, the RCMP has not released any public statement verifying what was taken or examined. The RV parked next to the main trailer, where Belinda and Justin Martell lived, also appears to have been overlooked in the early stages of the investigation. There are no public records or reports indicating that the RV was searched or that anything was seized from it, despite its proximity to the possible scene of the disappearance. Perhaps most shockingly, it wasn't until 3 weeks after the children were reported missing that law enforcement was seen inspecting underneath the trailer. Videos and witness statements showed officers using flashlights and removing newly constructed steps to access the crawlspace. The delay in conducting such a basic search only fueled public skepticism about how seriously the case was being handled. There's also been no confirmation about the children's personal belongings being tested for forensic evidence. Items like Lily's backpack or Jack's pull-up, which could contain important DNA or trace materials, have not been mentioned in any official communication. Likewise, there's no mention of examining the children's bedding or clothing for signs of foul play. Adding to the confusion, the statements made by several family members about hearing or seeing the children on the morning of May 2. Yet, none of those accounts have been backed up by any physical evidence, such as footprints, surveillance footage, or other independent verification. This raises the question, were these testimonies ever cross-checked against forensic findings? Reports also mention unmarked black vehicles, assumed to be from the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team, parked outside the trailer. However, RCMP has not confirmed the involvement of IHITE, leaving the public uncertain whether a homicide investigation is officially underway or not. During later searches, some witnesses note that Daniel remained on site as officers checked the trailer, without being removed from the area. There was no visible police tape, no crime scene markers, no physical barriers, all of which would normally be expected in a serious missing persons case. Despite calls from the public to use cadaver dogs or thermal scanners to explore underneath the trailer or in areas with disturbed soil, there has been no confirmation that these tools were deployed. This is especially troubling given that such equipment is considered standard in most missing persons investigations. Descriptions of the home and backyard from online commenters depict a cluttered and messy environment, which could easily hide or obscure evidence. The longer investigators waited to perform forensic sweeps, the more likely it became that physical traces were disturbed or permanently lost. Lastly, no reports have surfaced about law enforcement checking wells, septic tanks, storage containers, or water sources near the home, all of which are considered high priority areas when a child goes missing under suspicious circumstances. Nor has there been any indication that soil samples, fibers, or residue were tested. Beside the problems with the search process, many people began to notice a troubling pattern in the Sullivan case: the complete absence of oversight from medical, educational, or social institutions, an alarming failure that might have allowed warning signs to go undetected long before the children vanished. First, there is no public medical record or history for either Jack or Lily. No doctor visits, no confirmed vaccinations, no evidence of regular checkups for children living in Canada, where healthcare is accessible and immunization is standard. This absence is highly irregular and suggests that the children may never have been formally connected to the public healthcare system. There is also no information confirming whether Lily and Jack Sullivan ever received appropriate medical care before or during the period of their disappearance. Second, while it was initially believed the children were not in school, new information suggests that they had been enrolled and were reportedly struggling in class. According to statements from Malaya, the children's mother, both had shown signs of behavioral difficulty and were suspected to be on the autism spectrum, although they had never received a formal diagnosis. Still, no school name has been provided, and no educational officials have stepped forward with specific details about their current academic status. The lack of public acknowledgement from any school system only adds to the confusion and concern over how closely the children were being monitored. Third, after the disappearance, Meadow, the youngest sibling, only 16 months old, remained in the home, yet there is no indication she was ever taken for a medical or psychological evaluation. This is standard protocol in missing children cases, especially for siblings who might be exposed to trauma or neglect. If Meadow exhibited fear, injuries, or behavioral anomalies, such signs could have provided vital context, but the system apparently never checked. Fourth, there's no sign of involvement from Child Protective Services in a household where allegations of substance abuse, isolation, and poor living conditions circulated heavily online. One would expect previous CPS contact or ongoing supervision. But there is no documentation of any child welfare interventions, suggesting either a complete disconnect or a missed opportunity for early support or monitoring. Even more concerning, the children's absence from the community appears to extend beyond just school. There are no public sightings of the children in the weeks, or even months, before their reported disappearance. No grocery store employees, neighbors, or clinics came forward. This level of isolation would be hard to achieve without intentional avoidance of public institutions. Malaya, the children's mother, also does not appear to have engaged with any support services for low-income or at-risk families. Living in a remote area with 3 young children, including 1 infant, and surrounded by family conflict, she would normally qualify for assistance. Yet there is no sign she ever received or requested it. This failure of outreach, particularly from health and welfare services, leaves the strong impression that the children were invisible to the very systems meant to protect them. The fact that no agency raised alarms or even had records on the family raises urgent questions about how many other children in similar conditions might also be slipping through the cracks. On the side of the community and the supporters for the children in this case, the most persistent frustrations among those following the Sullivan case is the striking lack of transparency from law enforcement. From the moment the children were reported missing, the RCMP has offered little in the way of consistent communication or official updates. There have been no regular press conferences, no public briefings, and no clear investigative timeline. This silence has left a massive vacuum, one that's been filled by social media speculation, rumor, and unverified claims. Instead of hearing from a designated RCMP spokesperson, the public has had to rely on unofficial sources like the internet forums. Critical information, such as statements from key individuals, the time of last sightings, and supposed lie detector results, have all emerged from these non-traditional platforms. The RCMP has neither confirmed nor denied these details, further deepening the fog around what is fact and what is fiction. A major point of contention is the fact that some individuals have become informal suspects based solely on rumors and unverified claims rather than official action. For example, the biological father of the children was reportedly interrogated for several hours by authorities, but this information didn't come from any RCMP report or official statement. Instead, it originated from a person online who simply claimed to be a relative. No document, no press release, and no confirmation ever followed. This lack of transparency has caused immense confusion, and it raises the uncomfortable possibility that public suspicion is being shaped more by hearsay than by verified facts. It also highlights the dangerous potential for innocent individuals to be publicly targeted without due process, something that could be easily addressed with clear communication from law enforcement. Beyond that, there has been no publication of forensic findings, no release of surveillance footage, no detailed report of collected evidence, and no formal statements explaining what the RCMP is prioritizing. Are they treating this as a kidnapping, a potential homicide, an accident? That lack of direction has left the public grasping at straws, unsure where to focus attention or concern. Further confusing matters is the possible involvement of specialized units like the IHIT. Multiple online observers and local footage suggest ICE vehicles were present at the scene, yet RCMP has never confirmed whether this unit is officially part of the case. For a situation involving two missing children, this level of ambiguity suggests a failure to treat the matter with the gravity it deserves. Equally troubling is that RCMP has made no public attempt to extract or analyze surveillance footage from nearby roads or neighboring properties. Camera footage, even from traffic intersections or local businesses, can be crucial in identifying movements in or out of isolated areas, especially on the day the children allegedly disappeared. The fact that no such effort has been communicated or confirmed raises serious concerns about the thoroughness of the investigation. In more complex criminal cases, it's common for law enforcement to consult with behavioral analysts or criminal profilers. Yet no mention has been made of such involvement here. Without input from professionals trained to detect patterns in deception, trauma, or manipulation, key psychological indicators may be overlooked. Worse still, in many instances, the RCMP's response has lagged behind developments on social media. Leaked messages, witness statements, and even videos of potential evidence were circulated online before any official response came. This delay has led to the perception that the public is doing more work than the police, eroding trust in law enforcement's capability or commitment. The silence from RCMP has allowed false narratives and extreme theories to flourish unchecked. No one from the agency has stepped forward to directly address bizarre claims, ranging from human trafficking to satanic rituals. In the absence of official corrections, even the most outrageous ideas gain traction and further distract from factual investigation. Equally significant is the lack of confirmation regarding even the most basic investigatory actions. Did police secure a search warrant? What evidence, if any, was taken from the trailer, RV, or surrounding area? Were cadaver dogs used? Was the ground searched for buried items or signs of foul play? None of these questions have been answered, and they're overwhelmed, under-resourced, or simply indifferent. Perhaps most heartbreaking of all is the effect this lack of clarity has had on the larger community. People who genuinely want to help, who are sharing photos, theories, and emotional pleas, feel disillusioned. The public doesn't just want answers. They want to feel that someone, somewhere, is doing everything possible to bring these children home. Lost for over a month. It's been over a month since the search for Lily and Jack began. Long enough for hope of their safety to wither, turning once optimistic theories into the darkest possibilities a child could face. From the beginning, the theory that Jack and Lily Sullivan simply wandered off and got lost in the wilderness surrounding their home has been met with deep skepticism. The terrain around Gairloch Road in Nova Scotia is remote, filled with thick woods, uneven hills, and flowing streams. For two children under 10, one still reportedly wearing pull-ups, the idea that they'd have ventured far on foot, undetected, leaves more questions than answers. Given their age and physical limitations, it's highly unlikely they could have traveled far enough to vanish without a trace. And yet, after more than a month, no evidence, no footprints, no dropped toys, no pieces of clothing has surfaced within any reasonable search radius. Even more troubling is the apparent lack of urgency from the adults in the house. When a young child goes missing in such a dangerous area, a typical caregiver's response would be instant yelling the child's name, calling neighbors, searching the surrounding area, and alerting authorities as quickly as possible. But Daniel and Malaya waited until nearly 10 a.m. the next day before calling the police. That's at least 12 hours after either claimed to last hear or see the children. This level of delay is completely inconsistent with what anyone would expect from panicked parents in a real missing child emergency, casting serious doubt on the claim that the kids simply wandered off. Adding to the suspicion is the lack of any organized search in the hours and days that followed. In most Canadian missing child cases involving wilderness, police deploy helicopters, drones, cadaver dogs, and specialized search teams immediately. None of that happened here. Even when tools were eventually used, it was weeks too late. If Jack and Lily had truly wandered into the wild, their chances of survival would have dropped dramatically after 72 hours, especially without food, water, or shelter in cold and damp conditions. Furthermore, both children reportedly had developmental issues. Malaya mentioned Lily might be on the autism spectrum and that Jack, still in pull-ups, had potential cognitive delays. These conditions would make it difficult for either child to navigate being lost. They may not have known how to call for help or find their way back home. Their ability to make safe decisions, stay calm, or survive alone in the wilderness would have been severely compromised. Another red flag is the total absence of community sightings. Even in rural areas, anyone, should have noticed two young kids walking down a road or heard cries for help. Gairloch Road is not a completely abandoned place. It's a known route. Yet no neighbors, no drivers, and no passers-by reported seeing or hearing anything unusual. And there's no mention of any traffic or surveillance cameras being checked to confirm or rule out such sightings. Then there's the issue of the family dog. It's been noted the family had pets, but no one has reported the dog barking, chasing after the children, or reacting in any way. In cases where kids leave the house, dogs often follow or alert their owners. The silence of the dog adds to the suspicion that the children never actually left the house on their own. Environmental factors also don't support the wandering off scenario. Early May in Nova Scotia brings wet ground, cold nights, and soft soil, conditions that would normally capture footprints, drag marks, or other signs of human passage. But investigators found none of those. It's hard to believe that two young children, moving through nature, left behind absolutely no physical trace. Taken together, these facts paint a troubling picture. If Jack and Lily had truly gotten lost, there would have been signs, immediate adult panic, aggressive search efforts, physical clues, or community reports. The complete absence of all these typical responses and indicators makes the lost in the woods theory implausible. And the more time passes, the more it appears that this narrative may not be a mistake, but rather a deliberate attempt to hide a deeper truth. However, what if, by some miracle, Jack and Lily Sullivan truly did get lost? How are they out there? That was the most hopeful theory in the early days, one that many clung to. The idea that the children had simply wandered off into the woods near their home and were waiting, cold, hungry, scared, but alive. But now, over a month later, that hope is breaking under the weight of reality. If they were truly lost, here's what we would be facing now. First, the likelihood of survival would be nearly zero. Jack and Lily were both very young. Jack was still in pull-ups, and Lily may have had developmental challenges. According to their mother, neither had the knowledge or physical strength to locate clean water, find food, or build shelter. The nights in Nova Scotia in early May can drop to dangerously low temperatures. Without jackets or blankets, the risk of hypothermia would have set in quickly, possibly within the first night. After 7 to 10 days without assistance, survival would be virtually impossible. And we are now beyond 30. Second, the risk of injury or predation cannot be ignored. Gairloch Road is remote, surrounded by forest and rough terrain. It's home to black bears, coyotes, and other wildlife. The children could have fallen into a stream, slipped into a ditch, or become trapped somewhere inaccessible. But if that were the case, why hasn't a single clue surfaced? No torn clothing, no blood trail, no broken branches, no signs of disturbance, nothing. It's hard to believe that 2 young children disappeared into nature and left behind zero trace. Third, we missed the window for saving them, if they were savable at all. The first 24 hours are critical in any missing child case. After that, the odds of finding a child alive drop sharply. But in this case, there was no Amber Alert, no thermal drones, no cadaver dogs, no roadblocks or electronic pings. There was silence. That delay, intentional or not, may have erased whatever chance there was of finding Jack and Lily safe. If they really were lost, we failed them by not acting fast enough. Lastly, there's a theoretical, but extremely unlikely, possibility that someone found the children and took them in without alerting authorities. Maybe an off-the-grid individual unaware of the national search. But that scenario collapses under scrutiny. In over a month, no one has called, no child matching their description has shown up at a hospital, and there's been no anonymous tip or whisper in the media. If someone had found them, we would know by now. So what does this tell us? If the lost hypothesis is true, then we're no longer in a search and rescue situation. We're in recovery mode, and the fact that no remains, no evidence, and no sign of life has been found raises the haunting possibility that this wasn't a case of children who got lost, but of children who were lost on purpose. Either way, the clock ran out. Not just on their survival, but on our collective ability to believe the most hopeful theory we had. Kidnapped, a better chance to survive. It's a strange world when the most terrifying possibilities become the most hopeful. In the case of missing siblings Jack and Lily Sullivan, the 2 leading theories that offer any glimmer of survival are also the ones that send chills down any parent's spine: abduction by a stranger or kidnapping by someone they know. Gone are the early days when people clung to the idea of a harmless accident or a child wandering too far from home. Now, with each passing day and no sign of the children, it's the horror scenarios, those involving criminal intent, that paradoxically hold the only real hope that Jack and Lily are still alive somewhere. But it begs the question, has it really come to this? Has the idea of a calculated kidnapping, by a predator or even by family, become our best-case scenario? And if so, does abduction actually offer the greatest chance that the children are still out there, waiting to be found? With no neighbors close by and no surveillance cameras around, the opportunity was there, if someone knew what they were doing. One motivation for this direction is human trafficking. Though Nova Scotia isn't considered a hotbed for trafficking operations, the remote location and the family's isolation could have made Jack and Lily ideal targets, especially since they had no public medical or school records, essentially making them invisible to systems that might otherwise protect them. Some suggest a passerby, a drifter, or someone camping nearby could have come across the children and taken them. Others believe a stranger had been watching the home, observing patterns, and picked the perfect moment to act. In some darker versions of this theory, The kids might have been silently lured, drugged, or manipulated with toys or a familiar sounding voice. Despite all its potential, the theory is riddled with problems. There's no sign of forced entry, no broken locks, no scratches, no footprints leading away from the home. Even cadaver dogs, once finally used, found no trail of movement out of the trailer. There were also no ransom demands, no letters, no phone calls. If this was an organized kidnapping, that silence is unexpected. And there were no sightings of the children in the weeks after, no reports from nearby hospitals, or strangers claiming to have found them. More troubling, the authorities did not issue an AMBR alert. If law enforcement had truly believed a stranger took the kids, that kind of immediate, wide-scale alert would have been standard. Instead, there was a delay and a lack of urgency that feels inconsistent with the stranger danger narrative. RCMP has not publicly confirmed any search for suspicious vehicles or unidentified individuals in the area. There's been no mention of checking the sex offender registry or reviewing online activity that could suggest grooming or predatory behavior. No neighbors saw anyone unusual. No hikers or delivery drivers came forward. And oddly, the family's dogs, who might have barked at an intruder, seem to have made no sound. That silence suggests the kids may not have left with a stranger at all. Or if they did, the dogs were familiar with the person. Stranger abduction theories often rely on a combination of luck, timing, and perfect execution. But in the Sullivan case, there's no physical evidence, no eyewitnesses, no digital trail. The hope in this theory lies in its emotional comfort. It leaves the door open, that the children might still be alive. If the theory that Jack and Lily were abducted by a stranger turns out to be true, then every second wasted could mean one step further away from saving them. If we treat this theory seriously, here's what needs to be done immediately. Investigators should be reviewing every available traffic camera, private security feed, and dashboard camera footage from within 5 to 10 kilometers of the Sullivan residence. This includes footage from at least 48 hours before and after the morning of May 2nd. Any unfamiliar vehicles, especially those stopping, circling, or driving slowly through Gerlach Road, should be flagged. Even a partially captured license plate might lead to a suspect. If the children were taken by vehicle, they could be far from home by now. Law enforcement should deploy drones, thermal imaging, and cadaver dogs to search remote woods, abandoned houses, hunting cabins, and forgotten service stations within at least a 100 km radius. These are the types of places someone with bad intentions might go to avoid detection. This kind of sweep should have started weeks ago. Every hospital, urgent care clinic, and walk-in medical center in Nova Scotia and nearby provinces should receive an internal alert with Jack and Lily's descriptions. Instruct staff to flag any cases where a child is brought in without documentation, or when an adult provides inconsistent information. It's not uncommon for abducted children to need medical attention. This could be a vital opportunity to intervene. RCMP should pull all records of individuals with prior charges or investigations involving child exploitation, abduction, or severe mental health episodes. Those living within a 100 km radius of the Sullivans' home should be interviewed again, especially if they live alone, work with children, or have access to transportation. These cases can hinge on one overlooked name on a list. If this was part of a larger trafficking or exploitation operation, local efforts won't be enough. The RCMP must coordinate with Border Patrol, U.S. agencies, and international trafficking units. Jack and Lily's names and details need to be flagged in customs systems, port entries, ferry terminals, and small regional airports. If they crossed a border, time is running out to track them. It's time to relaunch a national awareness campaign. Updated images, height, weight, and clothing descriptions need to be visible everywhere. Bus stops, grocery stores, gas stations, truck routes, and clinics. Encourage people to report anonymously if they've seen a child who resembles Jack or Lily. Sometimes, it's a passing trucker or a store clerk who spots something odd and makes the difference. The public deserves to know what's been done under this theory. Has law enforcement ruled it out, Or are they still pursuing it? Were nearby vehicles ever tracked? Were registered sex offenders interviewed? Was digital surveillance of online platforms part of the early investigation? A formal update from RCMP is essential, not just to inform, but to calm growing speculation and frustration. If Jack and Lily were taken by a stranger, they may still be alive, but only if someone, somewhere, makes the right move. Without communication from the abductor, and without any physical evidence so far, this is a race against time. Public trust, swift coordination, and transparency could be the only chance left to bring those kids home. Every step listed here should have started on day one. But it's not too late, unless we let it be. On the other side, in many missing child cases, people often fear the idea of a stranger lurking outside. But what if the danger came from someone already inside the family circle, or at least close enough to be trusted? In the case of Jack and Lily Sullivan, known person, theory isn't just plausible. It might be the most logical explanation for how two children could vanish without a sound. One of the most compelling reasons this theory holds weight is the back door. It was found open on the morning of May 2nd, but there was damage, no sign of a break-in. That strongly suggests the person who took the children didn't have to force their way inside. They were either let in, or already had access. Even more unsettling is the silence. 4 adults were nearby: Daniel, Malaya, Belinda, and Justin. None of them heard anything strange. No footsteps, no crying, no struggle. The family had a dog, but there's no report of barking. That could mean the dog knew the person, or was never triggered. Children usually cry or resist if a stranger tries to take them. But if it was someone they trusted, they might have followed quietly. Malaya's family situation is anything but simple. Daniel's mother, Belinda, lived close by. Daniel was also involved with family members through previous relationships. These overlapping ties have led to speculation about internal family tension, possibly even disputes over custody or parenting. One theory is that someone close believed the children were unsafe and took them to protect them. This would make the abduction illegal, but possibly not malicious. It leaves room for hope the children could still be alive, just hidden. A darker possibility is that someone used the children as a way to hurt Malaya or Daniel. A personal grudge. Revenge. In this case, the children weren't the true targets. They were a means to punish their parents. And then, there's the idea of an inside job. Someone who was already in the house, or lived nearby, either took the kids or helped someone else do it. That would explain the lack of noise, the missing urgency, and why everything seemed so clean. Unlike the idea of a stranger sneaking in from the woods, this theory doesn't rely on someone completely unknown. There were no suspicious vehicles, no reports of unfamiliar people in the area. Someone familiar wouldn't raise red flags, and the kids might have gone with them willingly. The delayed 911 call is another red flag. Police weren't contacted until after 10 a.m., more than 12 hours after the children were last seen or heard. That's not normal for a panicked parent. It fits more with someone trying to buy time, or hoping the situation would resolve quietly. And let's not forget, these children had no visible footprint in systems like school, healthcare, or child welfare. That lack of documentation makes them easier to disappear, and harder for anyone to notice they're gone. To truly follow this theory, the first step would be to build a comprehensive map of everyone close to the family, relatives, past partners, friends, roommates, or anyone who regularly visited the home. Investigators should identify anyone who might have had personal grievances, past custody conflicts, or whoever expressed concern over the children's living situation. It's important to go through social media interactions to find messages, private conversations, or suspicious posts that could indicate planning or resentment. It's not unheard of for a family member or close acquaintance to remove children from what they believe is an unsafe situation. That's why police should check whether any distant relatives, especially those living in remote areas, might have taken the children in without notifying authorities. Rental records for motels, cabins, or Airbnb properties after May 2 should be reviewed. along with calls made to shelters or off-grid communities. In some cases, people have hidden children in religious or survivalist groups to keep them out of view. Search every adult's digital footprint. Phone calls, text messages, emails, and GPS data from their phones in the days before and after the disappearance. If someone was planning something, or even just humping, they may have left a trail of conversations, map searches, or anonymous calls. Investigators should also request footage from gas stations, convenience stores, and ATMs to see if any familiar faces were traveling with two children who resemble Jack and Lily. Police should release pictures of any family friends or relatives who were close to Jack and Lily and ask the public directly. This type of specific outreach may lead to useful tips from store clerks, teachers, neighbors, or even rideshare drivers. Doctors or clinic staff should also be on alert in case someone brings in children with no medical history or ID. It's often a red flag when someone tries to get help for kids without disclosing who they are. If not done already, a full physical and psychological assessment of Meadow should be carried out. At just 16 months old, she may not be able to describe what happened, but changes in her behavior, sleep patterns, or emotional reactions can still offer valuable clues. Trained specialists can also test her response to images of specific people. If she shows fear or strong emotional recognition, that could point towards someone who played a role in what happened. Anyone who suddenly changed their phone number, moved away, or cut contact after May 2 should be looked into more closely. Red flags also include people who seem oddly detached or completely silent online despite being previously involved with the family. Investigators should prioritize individuals who have the resources to hide children, such as a vehicle, financial stability, or access to property where kids could be kept without detection. If someone close to the family is responsible, they may still be nearby, and they may still be hiding those children. That possibility is worth chasing down with every available tool. A noisy transaction. Could the children have been a part of a transaction? It sounds like the darkest theory of all. And yet, in this case, the theory that the children were not kidnapped violently or lost in the woods, but rather handed over, starts to make a disturbing kind of sense. One more time, we see the familiar detail, but with different meaning. When two kids vanish in the middle of the night from a remote trailer, and four adults claim they heard nothing, no footsteps, no crying, no doors opening, it raises a haunting question. Did the children leave willingly? Or worse, were they expected to leave? That kind of silence almost never happens in a real kidnapping. It suggests one of two things. Either the person who took the kids was very familiar with the environment, or someone inside the home, or even all of them helped them leave. That's why many are now asking, was this planned? Even more concerning is what didn't happen afterward. Normally, when children go missing, parents print flyers, organize searches, and alert the media. In this case, there were only a few scattered posts. No public search teams. No interviews begging for their return. It's the kind of silence that doesn't come from panic. It comes from knowing more than you're saying. Some believe the family already knew, or believed they knew, where the children were. When police arrived, no one was removed from the trailer. The entire group, Daniel, Malaya, Belinda, and Justin, stayed on site. That's unusual. In most child abduction cases, police secure the scene and separate witnesses. But here, the group remained, with plenty of time to coordinate stories or hide evidence. The fact that everyone's statements were either vague or oddly consistent only makes it more suspicious. People who aren't hiding something usually don't all remember nothing. Observers online and in media clips noticed something else. The way Daniel and Malaya acted on camera. They were calm, measured. Too measured. Their lack of emotion struck many as artificial, even rehearsed. In similar past cases involving illegal custody exchanges or trafficking, guilty parties often show the same emotional detachment. Not because they're unbothered, but because they're focused on appearing normal instead of truthful. Then there's the larger silence. this time from law enforcement. The RCMP has barely released anything. No search warrants. No timelines. No statements from investigators. No public appeals. It's like the case is happening behind a wall. That level of secrecy sometimes points to the involvement of an organized network, especially in cases where children with no official records disappear quietly. With no school, medical, or welfare documentation, Jack and Lily were already invisible on paper. That makes it frighteningly easy to make them disappear in real life. However, if Jack and Lily were part of some kind of arranged handoff, whether a sale, an illegal custody shift, or something darker, then one question stands out above all. Why did it become such a public mess? In cases of trafficking or underground exchanges, discretion is everything. Quiet. No police. No cameras. No questions. But that's not what happened here. Within days, this case exploded. Media coverage, online sleuths, public pressure. If the plan was to move the children quietly, why let the whole world watch it burn? Multiple people were involved, say, a small group who knew or suspected what was happening. What if one of them changed their mind? Maybe someone was supposed to keep quiet and didn't. Maybe one person decided enough was enough and called the cops. That would explain a lot. If it's true, a question here is who is the betrayal? For the time gap, this might be the biggest red flag of all. The kids were last seen around 9:30 p.m., yet police weren't contacted until after 10 a.m. the next morning. That's a 12-hour gap. In real emergencies, missing kids, sudden accidents, that kind of delay is unheard of. Parents usually panic within minutes. But here, there was silence. No search party, no neighbors contacted, no screaming for help. It feels calculated, like someone needed time. If Jack and Lily were handed off to someone, legally or not, then someone out there knows where they are. Are they being hidden by someone who believes they're saving them from a bad home? Or are they somewhere much worse? In the hands of strangers who see them as a transaction. The longer this drags on, the more terrifying the silence becomes. If this was a plan, it either fell apart, or was always meant to disappear without a trace. If this truly was an orchestrated handoff or sale of the children, then the entire investigative approach must shift, from searching for lost kids to tracking down participants in a possible conspiracy. The implications are much darker, and so are the steps needed to follow this path forward. First, investigators need to reconstruct the timeline through the lens of coordination. Instead of viewing the hours before and after the disappearance as chaotic, they must now be seen as carefully chosen windows of opportunity. What were each adult's exact movements from May 1st to 3rd? Were there gaps that allowed someone to leave unnoticed? Did anyone deliberately avoid contact or change their story between retellings? Secondly, financial and communication records must be examined closely. Any coordinated transaction might leave a trail, digital or otherwise. Investigators should review all bank statements, e-transfer activity, and large cash withdrawals in the days leading up to and following the disappearance. Digital forensics can also reveal deleted texts, encrypted messaging apps, or suspicious web searches, especially those related to adoption, trafficking, or child custody issues. Third, all adults in the household should be re-interviewed with a different angle in mind: intent and premeditation. The goal is not just to clarify facts, but to detect guilt, protectiveness, or patterns of avoidance. Each person, Daniel, Malaya, Belinda, and Justin, should be questioned not just about what happened, but about who they spoke to, who they trust, and whether they had reason to believe the children were in danger or would be better off elsewhere. Fourth, family and close acquaintances must be scrutinized. It's possible Jack and Lily were handed off to someone known, someone who believes they're rescuing them, not hiding them. Authorities should reach out to any extended relatives, old friends, or contacts from out of town who might have taken the children. Motels, short-term rentals, or cabin stays within 100 kilometers of the property should be reviewed as well. Clinics, schools, and community centers should also be notified. Someone caring for the children may eventually need medical care or education services. A shared alert system with updated photos and physical descriptions should be distributed to every walk-in clinic, hospital, dentist office, and small-town pediatrician. Another possible tactic is to publicly encourage the safe return of the children, without threat of punishment. If someone is hiding them out of a misguided sense of protection, they might be willing to return them under the right conditions. Media outlets could help push a narrative focused on Jack and Lily's well-being, rather than punishment or blame. It's also critical to examine the unusual silence from law enforcement. Could it be that RCMP is withholding information because they're tracking something sensitive, like a trafficking ring or interstate handoff? Investigators should push for records of interagency cooperation or any sealed orders that might indicate a deeper operation is quietly unfolding. A whistleblower mechanism could be another key step. If someone in the household or community is feeling guilt, but fears coming forward, creating an anonymous tip line or offering legal might help break the silence. These options should be promoted through local churches, community centers, or online spaces where indirect connections might exist. Finally, investigators must look for silence itself. Who deleted posts, who went quiet on social media, who changed numbers or moved without notice. Sometimes, the absence of noise is its own red flag. If this was a transaction disguised as tragedy, someone's trying very hard not to leave a trace. But silence always leaves a shadow. The Sullivan case, no matter how it ends, leaves behind a deeply unsettling lesson about silence, systems, and how easily children can slip through the cracks. Whether Jack and Lily were lost, taken, or handed off, the one constant has been a lack of urgency from those who should have cared the most. Parents didn't act fast. Authorities stayed vague. And the institutions that were supposed to protect these children never even knew they existed. This is more than a mystery. It's a warning. It tells us what happens when there's no oversight, no follow-up, no one watching the kids who don't make noise. It shows how misinformation, denial, and institutional failure can work together to let two young lives vanish without a single verified trace. If anything can come from this heartbreak, it's a demand for change. Stronger systems to track and protect vulnerable children, quicker public response in missing cases, and a community that refuses to let silence be the final answer. Because the worst tragedy isn't just that two children disappeared. It's that no one was truly looking until it was already too late. And until the truth is found. Until we know where Jack and Lily are, we hold on to hope. We pray they are safe. We pray they are loved. And we pray they know, wherever they are, that the world hasn't given up on them. The Sullivan case, no matter how it ends, leaves behind a deeply unsettling lesson about silence, systems, and how easily children can slip through the cracks. Whether Jack and Lily were lost, taken, or handed off, the one constant has been a lack of urgency from those who should have cared the most. Parents didn't act fast. Authorities stayed vague. And the institutions that were supposed to protect these children never even knew they existed. This is more than a mystery. It's a warning. It tells us what happens when there's no oversight, no follow-up, no one watching the kids who don't make noise. It shows how misinformation, denial, and institutional failure can work together to let two young lives vanish without a single verified trace. But as we wait for answers, there's one more truth we have to hold on to. We must keep our judgments personal, not public. Until there's an official conclusion, we must resist turning grief into accusation. Because for all the questions we ask, the people at the center of this are still, at least in appearance, two parents who lost their children. The priority must remain the same: to find Jack and Lily, not to escalate blame without proof. If anything can come from this heartbreak, it's a demand for change, stronger systems to track and protect vulnerable children, quicker public response in missing cases, and a community that refuses to let silence be the final answer. Because the worst tragedy isn't just that two children disappeared. It's that no one was truly looking until it was already too late. And until the truth is found. Until we know where Jack and Lily are, we hold on to hope. We pray they are safe. We pray they are loved. And we pray they know, wherever they are, that the world hasn't given up on them. Praying for the children,